I'm Larry Fishman. We are at the Fishman headquarters in Andover, Massachusetts. And we manufacture, design, test, develop all the Fishman products in this building. We are proud to be the supplier to the major guitar brands in the world of electronics and just amplification gear in general. I like to make things. I was always fascinated with materials. I got a go-kart from my grandfather when I was 13 or something, and I thought that was the greatest thing on the planet. And I rebuilt that multiple times, started building motorcycle engines, doing motocross racing, and then got involved. This is North Carolina. There's a lot of racing going on down there, dirt tracks. I thought I was going to do that for a living, but I got the music bug really strongly, and eventually I enrolled in Berklee, and I spent 6 semesters there studying composition and jazz performance. I ended up playing jazz groups for about 10, 15 years, pretty full-time, traveled a lot, but I think I was probably the only bass player in Boston in the early 70s. I had a machine shop in the basement. I was playing in jazz clubs, and the music was changing, it was getting louder. And I was playing a double bass with a microphone in front of it, and that was not working. And the guys in the group said, "Look, you got to play Fender." I said, "Fenders belong on cars, guys. I'm not going to do it." And I started working on a bass pickup. I bought every bass pickup that was available. There were about 4 of them at the time. Over the course of about a year, I had a steady gig in Cambridge. I had my feet tattooed on the floor so I could stand in the same place all the time. And I was driving the quintet members crazy. "How's this one sound?" And I'd come in with another version every week. And I was finally playing at high volume without feedback with double bass, loving it. That's really what started. I had no intention of starting a business or selling it. But I had a woodworking accident. I was building some furniture, and I had a piece of hard maple kicked back out of a table saw, and it shattered this finger and just splintered, which healed, but I couldn't play for almost 3 months. And at that point, my bass needed work. I took it down to Lenny Harlos, who was a bass repairman on the South Shore. He did most of the stuff for the jazz guys, and he did work for the Boston Symphony players. And he called me a couple of days later. He said, "Where'd you get this pickup? This thing is great." And I said, "Well, I made it." And he said, "You kidding me?" I said, "No." He said, "I can sell these. Can you make more?" And I said, "I got nothing to do. I can't do anything." And I started making pickups, and he started selling them, and I actually sold them into Manny's and Sam Ash down in New York, and Wurlitzer in Boston, and it became sort of the pickup standard for jazz players. Suddenly, I had to hire people. I hired Reeves Gabrels. We had done some gigs together, and Reeves was always broke. I said, "Reeves, come on, come on to my house. We're making pickups in the basement." And we got Ralph Rosen, a good blues drummer locally. He had a little crew down there, and started making those. And then I got a call from Martin Guitars, and they said, "Look, we have this thin line pickup that a West Coast company was making for us. It was a thin model that didn't require any modification of the saddle." And they said, "Can you design something like that? Because we're having problems with the ones that we're buying already." And I went down to Martin with some prototypes. They had a shootout, and I'm in this conference room at Martin with 15 executives. Hugh Bloom was the president, and Dick DeWalt was head of sales. He said, "Look, can you make 10,000 of these next year?" I said, "Sure." And they said, "All right, well, we need them." We negotiated a price. I went home. I told my wife what was happening. She said, "Not in my house." And we went out that next week and rented 5,000 square feet of industrial space in Woburn. And I called all my musicians friends who needed day gigs. And we started making pickups there, and that just kept rolling and rolling and rolling. I realized at that point, before the business started to really grow, I said, this stuff cannot be designed in a lab. You have to make it work in the real world, and you got to make it work with musicians. So it was always the feedback from the musicians that made the incremental steps that made a system really, really work. Some of the people I ran into in the beginning that just gave me a lot of confidence. I did all John McLaughlin's early acoustic instruments, and I still am doing his stuff today when he needs something. You know, he would fly over here with a new instrument that Abe Wechter had made him, and we'd spend 5 days in my shop making stuff for it. So that was a great experience. And through all that, interfacing with good musicians of all different ilks, I ran into Ken Parker. And Ken was building a 6-string bass for Anthony Jackson. We talked on the phone. I said, yeah, I think I might be able to do something. He said, fine, can I come see you? And I said, yeah, I'm kind of busy, come up in about 3 weeks, put a date on the calendar. And I'd forgotten about it. And I was at home, and all of a sudden this guy shows up in a beat up old Chevy, tall guy with a beard. He's got a bass wrapped in an army blanket coming into the house. I'm going, oh boy. And we became instant friends. When I saw what he made, I was just astonished that someone could do that, and we started working together.
Working with Larry Fishman, who, you know, is America's great piezo element designer for musical instruments, we tried to give an instrument that had more tonalities and a bigger range of voices and shapes of sound than other guitars. So instead of just having electromagnetic pickups, we had a powered mixer on the guitar so that you could use the piezoelectric system or the magnetic system, or you could blend them both together, either in separate outputs or in a single output. A big group of us got to hear Mary Chapin Carpenter in Boston, and on the 4th or 5th song, after she'd played a Guild and a Martin and a Gibson, she strapped on her Fly Concert, that is a guitar without magnetic pickups, just the piezo pickup. And just for a sound check, just hit a big fat G chord, and, and the whole room drew a breath. You could hear everybody in the room said, because it sounded gigantic.
And we had a successful work relationship for almost 20 years. We're still great friends, we see each other a lot. It's been a lot of fun. And I happen to have some of the talents that were needed to pull this stuff off. It was just a happy mix. When I try to design a new transducer, I hate to fail at things. I don't like to be disappointed, so I'll try 5 different concepts all at once. Because if you spend 2 weeks building one idea and it doesn't work, it's not fun. So I'll take 5 different approaches, and I get all the materials out and put them on my bench, and I'll start working a little bit on this, a little bit on this, a little bit on this, and oh, that worked there, oh, that'll help this. And eventually, the combination of the techniques and the things that you've learned in the past, they sort of come together. It's kind of like writing a tune.
So working with Larry is really interesting. He's incredibly motivated to get everything perfect, which is hard to do. But we strive for that. We strive for perfection. We don't settle for anything, even at the expense of schedule. In OEM, a lot of times we're working for a customer that has somewhat of a deadline or a need for product at a certain date. We wouldn't send something out we weren't happy with just for the schedule. So I've learned to not settle and to question everything that you think might be an issue, because almost all the time it is an issue.
I'm not really a great engineer from a classical point of view. You know, I hate doing the engineering rigor and writing every step down. I like to skip steps and I have great engineers in this building. They get it. They're disciplined and they know how to do it. But it's kind of like cooking for me. I never cook with a recipe. A handful of this and a little bit of that. And sometimes it comes out great. And other times the dog won't even eat it. So.
Pickups that are made generally for string instruments, like violins, cellos, violas, those pickups, mandolins, resophonic guitars, those pickups are all made literally by hand. You can machine some parts, but in the end, those pickups are really attributed to the skill set of the people that do the work downstairs, and it's impossible to mechanize that. It's really like building a model. It's like a model shop. Even though it's documented procedurally, the skill set needed to do that is something you learn over years.
Larry Fishman literally, I would say, changed my life. He's run the largest acoustic guitar pickup manufacturing or amplifier company that there's been for 43 years at this point. So, I mean, he's already won the game. you know? And the thing I like about Larry is that he could have tried to make guitar pickups a long time ago, but he's not the type to just make something and just settle. He really wanted there to be a truly groundbreaking technology in order to, you know, move that along. And then when Fluence kind of was introduced to the team and he developed it with our team.
Testing is our bread and butter, for sure. Every single thing we make here by hand gets tested, 100%. We use fixtures that simulate an instrument. In all of those cases, for all of those pickups, we use D'Addario strings on every fixture. I've tried probably every string out there for acoustic instruments, and I just keep coming back over to D'Addario because they just work the best. In the test fixtures, sound is not as important as balance, but it's nice to have the same sort of reference string that we use upstairs when we're designing stuff.
Our job in building electronics to amplify musical instruments, I think, is to provide something that is absolutely repeatable and consistent. Because if you've got variables in the instrument itself, and I know there are variables in different types of magnetic coil pickups and so forth, you haven't got a chance of figuring out something that's universally good if the string is varying. And that's where D'Addario comes in. The consistency, repeatability, reliability of that string is astonishing to me because strings they look simple, I know they're not. And like I say, you guys control it all from the dirt to the packaging. And what happens in between is really I know it's from hard work and smart people that figured out how to make a good product and to repeat it day after day after day after day. And that's why we use them here in all our test gears and all our development, is we don't need an extra variable. There's enough variables that we have to deal with. If the strings were varying all over the place, we'd never be able to assure that our quality is where we need it to be.